So welcome to Sydney Sussex College and the University of Cambridge for another Cambridge Polish Studies event. I'm Stanley Bill, I'm the lecturer in Polish Studies here at the University of Cambridge. And we have the next instalment of what has become a tradition. It's always at this time of year, and this is the combination of a translation competition that's run here at the university for students of Polish studies in the Faculty of Modern and Medieval Languages, with an invitation to one of Poland's most prominent and interesting writers. So Cambridge Polish Studies has existed for 3 years almost now. This is the third year. In the first year, we invited the poet Adam Zagajewski to read his poetry and present the prize in the translation contest. Last year, we had Olga Tokarczuk here to discuss her novels. And this year, we have the great pleasure of welcoming Dorota Masłowska. Can you please welcome Dorota? For many of you, Dorota doesn't need an introduction, but I will introduce her a little more thoroughly later. We also have another special guest, the eminent translator of Polish literature into English, Antonia Lloyd-Jones. Could you please welcome Antonia? And Antonia is also the judge of the translation contest. She's the person with the most expertise in this field that one could imagine. She sets the text's real challenges for the Polish studies students here at Cambridge, and then she chose the winners. So today what we'd like to do, before we move on to some readings from Dorota Masłowska's works and a discussion with her about her writing, we'd like to just present the prizes for the translation contest, but also give one of the students, the winner of the contest, the opportunity to read his short translation, the winning translation. I should add that the prize, sponsored by Talkman Language Solutions, a private company in Poland, is an amazing one because it's a 2 or 3 week intensive course in Polish language and culture at the Jagiellonian University in Kraków in summer, all expenses paid. So it's a great prize, and we also have some book prizes for the other students. So if I could just welcome Dorota Masłowska to the front here, because Dorota will present the prizes to the students. So first of all, we ended up with a joint third place. It was impossible to separate the translations. So for the first of those third place winners, could I welcome Celia Dyson to the stage, please? The second third place winner is Claire Conway. Could I welcome Claire to the stage, please? Second place winner, Polly Harlow. And for the winner of this year's Talkman Prize for translation of literature from Polish into English, Cameron Holloway. Now, in just a moment, we'll welcome Cameron back to the stage to read. His translation. But before we do that, I would like to hear a few words from Antonia Lloyd-Jones about translation, because at these events, this tradition that we've created where we're celebrating Polish literature in the UK, translation is obviously crucial, because most readers in the UK don't have access to the Polish. We're educating a generation of students who are beginning to do so, starting to learn the Polish language, but translation remains indispensable to the dissemination of Polish literature abroad. Antonia Lloyd-Jones is perhaps the most prolific practitioner, and she has a few words to say about translation in this year's contest. Please welcome Antonia Lloyd-Jones.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me here again. It's lovely to be here. The first thing I have to do is apologise to the students. I'm really sorry, because I gave you a piece to translate that probably had you hating me like poison as you sat there trying to figure out what the hell it meant. Because what it was, I chose something which is a very traditional Polish text, legends. And there's a wonderful tradition of Polish myths and legends, and they're quite specific, the Polish ones. And I have a wonderful book of specifically Warsaw legends, so I chose a couple of those to be translated, but they're in old-fashioned Polish. It's pretty hard to disentangle, and you really did an amazing job, because the challenge just of working out what on earth it means is one thing. And then, of course, it's a rather stylized sort of a story. So you've also got to think, well, how on earth do I put that into English? What's the style for that in English? So it's a double challenge. And that's partly why I chose it, because I wanted, I suppose, to demonstrate that it's one thing to understand what the words say, but it's another thing to, once you know what the author's trying to do, it's another thing to think about the poor old reader, and to think about, well, how would my reader in English receive this text, and to find a style, a voice that reader will respond to. So that's the double challenge of translation. And it also proves that it's not a science, it's an art. And so you mustn't be disheartened at all, because you all did very well, considering it was a very difficult text. And there were lots of excellent solutions to tricky phrases in everybody's translations. So I was duly impressed as ever here. And I'm a terrible Luddite when it comes to translation theory. I would make a bonfire out of all translation theory books and, warm myself of a long winter night, because if anyone ever tries to persuade you that you have to read all sorts of dense-looking, terrifying theory books in order to be a good translator, just don't. Just get on and do the translation. You can learn a lot quicker like that. So I've got an illustrative example out of your translations. The simplest sentence in those texts that I gave you. And right, there's two stories. One of them is about the Griffin and the Mermaid. So the Mermaid is the symbol of Warsaw nowadays, and one of the stories about her, which you'll hear later. I don't have to tell you the story, you're going to hear it. There's a sentence which is Ja jestem Griff odrzekł. So literally, I am Griffin, or however you want to call him. He answered. Okay. So you came up out of 8 translations. Only 2 of those translations had that sentence the same. And every other sentence in every translation was completely and utterly different. So the first one said, I am the Griffin, he replied. So Griffin is there, Gryphon. The second one, I am Griff, Gryf, he said. Third one, I am the Griffon, he replied. And Griffin there is Griffon. The fourth one, I am the Griffin, Griffin, he said. The fifth one, I am Griffin, Griffin, he replied. Sixth one, I am a Griffin, he replied. Seventh one, I am the Griffon, the Griffon, Gryphon, it replied. You see, so, and then the final one was I am a Griffin, he replied. So only 2 the same. And you see, they're all right in their way. So there's a choice there between the or nothing, or he or it, or said or replied or answered, or Griffin or Griff or Griffin or Griffin or whatever. And it was the same with the title of the second story, which in Polish is Zabójcy. There were only 2 the same there for that one word, bandits. Then there was one that was the bandit, there was the bandits, there was killers, robbers, thieves, and murderers. And personally, I would have put brigands, but So well done. And you're going to be hearing from an author whose work is really stunning. This woman is a linguistic conjurer. And if I ever attempted to translate her work, I think probably my brain would explode. So that's where I draw the line. Thank you.
And now I'd like to welcome Cameron Holloway to read his translation. Let me note, by the way, that this is Cameron's first year of learning Polish. All of the students that This competitions, their first year of learning Polish was an incredible challenge and extremely impressive what they all produced. So please welcome Cameron Holloway.
Thanks very much. So I actually called it the Siren, not the Mermaid, so got that wrong for a start. Anyway, the tale of the noble Griffin and the beautiful Siren. It is a strange tale that occurred long, long ago, when Warsaw was only a small city. At that time, the red defensive walls contained a market and a few streets. The steadfast citizens worked as craftsmen or merchants, and on the banks of the Vistula, in huts huddled up against the cliff as if in swallows' nests, lived fishermen and boatmen, who sailed their barges laden with grain and fruits. Under the waves of the Vistula, there lived a strange creature from ancient times, called the Griffin. He had a beautiful human head, a lion's body and a serpent's tail, and enormous bat-like wings. He was blessed with superhuman intellect, an extraordinary nobility, and his courage surpassed that of the bravest knights. And on top of all this, he had a loving heart, full of compassion for every sorrow. Nobody knew why the magnificent Griffin had taken a liking to that grey, gently flowing river and the city which stood above it on the hill. Only one thing was certain, that he kept watch over the city, taking it under his protection. He protected it from fire and floods, banished storm clouds with a flap of his wings, and if an enemy attacked the city, he would strike them down with his sword. On quiet, clear days, he would rise from the waves of the Vistula and lay down in the shallows. Sometimes he could be seen on top of the guard towers or on the roofs of the stone tenement houses, or sometimes he would slip into the greenery of the royal gardens. And at night, when the moon was shining, he would stroll around the market, run around the narrow streets, or repose on the stone steps. It was for this reason that the noble fathers of the city of Warsaw, recognizing the significance of his protection, immortalized the Griffin's figure on the seals of the city, and to confirm their importance, all documents were sealed with this seal, imprinted in wax or resin. Then one day the Griffin got on a boatman's raft and cast off, sailing all the way to the Baltic. It sailed well for him, and when the raft struck the shore of Gdansk, a sort of sea barrier, the Griffin met a siren emerging from the sea cliffs. She was beautiful, fair-haired, and the scales of her fish's tail shone like silver. She sang in an extraordinary manner, as only a siren can. At the sight of the Griffin, she halted her song and whispered, "I am the daughter of the king of the Baltic, and who are you?" "I am the Griffin," he replied. "The Griffin," the siren repeated admiringly. "Oh, stay here with me forever. I will sing your favourite song." "I cannot stay here, even though you are the most beautiful siren in the world. I must return to the small quiet city on the Vistula. I cannot forsake it. I cannot leave it unguarded." "Then take me with you," replied the siren. "I want to be with you, for there is no knight so magnificent as you." So the Griffin returned to Warsaw with the fair-haired siren, and they settled on the shore of the Vistula, among the rustling willows. But one day, a trumpeter in one of the city's towers sounded the alarm. The cry carried across the whole city, "To arms! The Swedes are surrounding the city." When the Griffin heard this, he raised himself up on his wings and rushed to the defense of his beloved city. His swords struck down enemies like a bolt of lightning. They fled before him in fear. But there was one amongst them who, through betrayal and deceit, managed to approach him and dealt him a fatal blow right to the heart. With a tremendous effort, and for the final time, the wounded Griffin hauled himself up on his wings and dragged himself to the shore of the Vistula, where the siren was waiting for him. But there his life came to an end. Then the siren, screaming desperately, seized his sword, and like a whirlwind she threw herself into battle. The Griffin's weapon wreaked enormous destruction, and the terrified Swedes retreated from the walls. Great was the joy in the city at this victory. The people cheered, set fires, played music. But on the shore of the Vistula, by the side of the Griffin, with his pierced heart, the siren wept. Yet as she had come to love that city of the Griffin, she remained there forever, and just as the Griffin once had, she now began to protect Warsaw from harm with the golden sword. In time, the city elders, recognizing this, began to print her image in place of that of the Griffin, and so it has remained to this day.
So those of you who haven't been to Warsaw, if you go there, you will find that still the crest of the city is this siren holding a sword aloft. Now we know why. Dorota Masłowska burst onto Poland's literary scene in 2002 as a 19-year-old in an extraordinary literary debut with the novel Wojna polsko-ruska pod flagą biało-czerwoną, or as it was initially translated into English, Snow White and Russian Red. A film was made on the basis of this book called Wojna polsko-ruska, the Polish-Ruski War. So if we translate the title literally of the novel, it's the Polish-Ruski War under the red and white flag. The film was made in 2009. In 2005, she published her second novel, Paw Królowej, which could be translated as the Queen's Peacock, or more colourfully, as some have suggested colloquially, as the Queen's Vomit. That ambiguity is there. And Dorota Masłowska won the Nike Prize for this novel, which is probably the most prestigious literary award today in Poland. In 2006, she published her first play, Dwoje biednych Rumunów mówiących po polsku, Two Poor Romanians Speaking Polish. In 2008, another play, Między nami dobrze jest, Things Are Fine Between Us. And in 2012, she published her next novel, Kochanie, zabiłam nasze koty. Honey, I Killed Our Cats. In 2014, she made something of a career change and released an album of music, of songs, under the title, we'll ask about this a little later, under the title Społeczeństwo jest niemiłe. Society is mean, including some very amusing satirical songs, but also the characteristic use of colloquial language become poetry that is so typical of all of her works. So before we start a discussion, I think that we need to get into the texture of Dorota Masłowska's writing. So we'll first ask Dorota to read a passage, a lengthy passage in Polish. So those of you that don't understand Polish can feel your way into the rhythms and textures of the original. And then I will read the English translation of the same passage by Benjamin Paloff. So this will give us a starting point, and then we'll move into some questions about this book and about writing in general. On some level, though, just to introduce this book, it deals with the representatives of young, provincial, perhaps even underclass of people who feel left behind by Poland's post-1989 transition and deeply resentful towards both the Polish political elite and the West. They seem to fear the malevolent intentions of the symbolic Ruskis, and we'll ask about this a little later, whose influence they see everywhere, but also the destructive influence of Western capitalism on Poland. The main character, whose name is Silny, translated as nails, as in tough as nails in the English, calls himself a leftist and declares himself in favor of social redistribution against elites. So one of the first questions we're going to ask after the reading is whether the fictional diagnosis of a certain section of Polish society in 2002 still holds very true today, and in fact whether this novel, in a poetic way, reveals the undercurrent of hopelessness and anger that is perhaps speaking out loud and clear across Europe and beyond today. So before we get into that conversation, please welcome Dorota Masłowska to the stage.
Good evening. First of all, I want to present my my personal reward for Cameron for his translation, because I brought some illustration for your text. It's Griffin. I made it on my body not to lose it. It's Kashubian Griffin, a part of my local identity, regional identity. Okay, and now I'll read some excerpts from Wojna polsko-ruska. Budzę się. Ślepy, głuchy, niemy, niczym duży kret wywleczony z podziemi, zagrzebany w zakrwawionym tapczanie. Półżywy jakby, wsadzony w pudełeczko po zapałkach i zasunięte wieczko. Potężny delay. Zewsząd dzwony. Dzwony stereo, reszta mono. Zdaje się, iż wszystko, czego nie było nigdy, jest teraz w mej głowie. Wszystko, czego nigdy nie było. Cały ten brak, całe milczenie jako trzeci rozmówca. Cała wata świata, cały erzac, cały styropian napchany w mą głowę. Przez noc przytyłem. Jestem tak ciężki, iż sam siebie nie mogę postawić na nogi. Stężony roztwór, jak gdybym zaplątał się w zasłonę, jak gdybym zaplątał się w katanę i nie mógł stamtąd wyjść. Wsadził łeb w rękaw i nie mógł wywlec na powrót. Jakby ta Angela we mnie nie w tapczan się wybebeszyła, co teraz leżał brzmiały, podwójne serce po obu stronach, podwójna wątroba, 6 nerek i kilka pustaków. To jest bardzo dziwne. I kiedy wstaję tak w południe, myślę chwilę, czemu moja starsza nie wróciła jeszcze z firmy Ceptera? Choć może dzwoniła, lecz ja nic o tym nie wiem. Zastanawiam się, czemu ja nie odbierałem telefonu. Nie mogę przypomnieć. Zastanawiam się, co to są w ogóle za porządki i czy przypadkiem nie jest tak, że nieraz sam w tym mieście żyję, bo cały gatunek wymarł. A kiedy tak stoję, przede mną widok na całe mieszkanie utrzymany w stylistyce batalistycznej. Krajobraz po bitwie. Zastanawiam się, czy przypadkiem wojna już się nie stała tu pod moją nieobecność, kiedy spałem. Decydująca bitwa. Samo centrum dowodzenia, gdy spałem, Ruski weszli na mieszkanie, wdarli się. Wszystko powywracali kolbami, pozestrzelali z obrazów pejzaży z wodospadami, słoneczniki, a szczególnie zniszczyli zegar skórzany. Matkę Boską z Lichenia z błękitnego plastiku strącili z lodówki. Łebek odleciał. Święta woda nabrudziła na posadzkę. Zadeptali kafelki w łazience. Wszystkie kobiety, co się dało, zgwałcili na Wersalce. Urządzili tu sobie sztab generalny, komitet do spraw przeleceń. Konie wprowadzili, ptasie mleczko wyjedli, papierosy spalili, tapicerkę zasyfili i do widzenia. Do zobaczenia w przyszłym życiu na Białorusi. Mojego Brackiego i mą starszą wzięli na niewolników. Mnie pewnie zabili, bo tak właśnie mam wrażenie, że to właśnie zrobili ze mną. Zabili mnie jakimiś ciężkimi przedmiotami. Co jeszcze słyszę wewnątrz głowy, dalekie echa tych ciosów, wystrzałów. Lecz dlaczego mnie, skoro moja matka robiła z nimi niezłe interesy, siding, panele, cepter? Dlaczego mnie zatłukli akurat? Dlaczego w samą głowę? Co teraz czuję właśnie, że pełna jest uczucia żelastwa, pokręteł wirujących dookoła własnej osi, złomowliska, blach wygiętych. Gdzie oni byli, jak Magda miała poglądy przeciwko nim i jawnie prowadziła ideologię antyruską? Lecz coś się zmieniło i to stwierdzam, kiedy ściągam żaluzje pionowe. Świat wylazł z foremki. Słońce większe, tłustsze, upasione jak pasożyt nas toczący. Napierdala po oczach, bez litości. Prosto we mnie wycelowane, prosto we mnie świeci, jak co najmniej lampa gestapowska. Gadaj silny, będziesz robił grzechy nam tu dalej, bo jak nie, to pokręcimy gałką i umrzesz na to światło mordercze, syczące, języczkami białymi cię wylizujące. Sznuryczek z żaluzją skrzypi, kurtyna w bok i oto przedstawienie, którego się za życia zobaczyć nie spodziewałem, bo takich przedstawień nie ma, takie rzeczy nie mają miejsca nigdzie na świecie. Nie mogę uwierzyć, w co widzę. Przez okno chcę się z tego szoku wychylić, bo oczy mi się nie chcą otworzyć i widzę tyle, co przez szparę, a reszta ciemno. To walę czołem w szybę PCV azbest, co jeszcze echo jakiś refluks się robi, echo straszne, co nagle robi się jeszcze jaśniej. A co jeszcze powiem, to, że oczami moimi, co już mówiłem, przez noc jakąś skórą bonusową zarosły i widzę ogólnie niewiele, no ale to, co widzę, to widzę. I to nie żaden halun na bańce, żaden flashback ściemniony, tylko reality show, co ja teraz widzę. Otóż raptem nie ma już kolorów na tym świecie, nie ma, brak. Kolory przez noc zostały ukradzione lub cokolwiek, może wyprane, może wyprali ten krajobraz, pejzaż za oknem w pralce automatycznej, nie bardzo tym, co trzeba proszku. Co moja starsza też mi kiedyś taki numer wywinęła z dżinsami. No jednego dnia miałem dżiny zwykłe niebieskie, a już następnego dnia normalnie białe. Białe Big Stary z białą metką bez napisu. Wkurwiłem się, bo w towarzystwie, w pubie byłbym skończony. Co silny, na komunię świętą przyszłeś, lecz się spóźniłeś. Komunii świętej już nie ma. Skończyła się, wysprzedana do domu, możesz wrócić na przyszły rok. Nieważne jak to było ze spodniami. Co było, to było, ale jedno jest pewne. Cokolwiek zrobili, czy kwaśny deszcz to był, czy inna katastrofa ekologiczna, cysterny z wybieraczem, czy wypadek lewego, gdy jechał swoim golfem pełnym amfy, góra domów, normalnie biały mur wapnem czy innym świństwem przejechany. Sąsiadów dom, co się dochrapali sporego hajsu na przekrętach lewych samochodów od ruskich, sprowadzanych nagle do połowy, też biały od góry. Do połowy, wszystko do połowy białe. Najczęściej połowa domów. A to, co na dole, ulica, to do kurwy jasnej jest czerwone. Wszystko biało-czerwone, z góry na dół. Na górze polska amfa, na dole polska menstruacja. Na górze Polski importowany z polskiego nieba śnieg, na dole Polskie Stowarzyszenie Polskich Rzeźników i Wędliniarzy. A gdzie nie spojrzy, jakaś służba pomarańczowa zatacza się z wiadrami farby, z wałkami, na wietrze taśmy biało-czerwone, ostrzegawcze łopoczą, co by wrony nie siadały i nie nasrywały. Radiowozy, jakieś samochody, jakieś instalacje, rusztowania, chorze, no po prostu chorze wprost to wygląda. Miasto mogą Sputniki zrobić zdjęcie z kosmosu. Paranoja.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So I think it's really good to, even for those of you that don't understand the Polish, to really feel the language, to get a longer period of exposure to it. Now, this text is extraordinarily difficult to translate into English. We are dealing with this first novel of Dorota Masłowska's because it's the only one that at this point exists in English. The translation was done by Benjamin Paloff. He did an extraordinarily good job of what would be one of the most difficult prose works to translate because it is colloquial language become poetry, become incantation almost, I would say. So now I'm going to read the same passage in English, and this will give those of you who know Polish and were just listening to the original the opportunity to have that feeling of satisfaction of criticizing all of the mistakes that the translator made or that you think the translator made without having to take on the terrible task yourself. I wake up, blind, deaf, mute, like a big mole dragged out of the ground, buried in a bloody pull-out, like half alive, tossed into a matchbox and shut in, a massive delay, ringing from everywhere, ringing in stereo, the rest in mono. Seems that everything that was never in my head before is there now, everything there never was, that total lack, the total silence like a third conversant, the whole cotton ball of the world, all the ersatz, all the styrofoam crammed into my head. I've gained weight during the night. I'm so heavy that I can't get myself on my feet, a concentrated solution, as if I'd gotten all tangled up in a curtain, as if I'd gotten all tangled up in a coat and couldn't get out of it, put my head into my sleeve and couldn't pull it back out, as if that Angela had gutted herself into me and not into the pull-out, so that now I'm lying here, swollen, split, a heart split into two sides, a split liver, 6 kidneys, and several cinder blocks. And when I get up at noon, I think for a second why my old lady hasn't come back yet from the Zepter Corporation. Though maybe she called, but I don't know anything about that. I wonder why I didn't pick up the phone. I can't recall. I wonder what the hell is going on here and whether it just so happens that all of a sudden I'm the only one living in this town because the whole species has died out. And when I stand up, in front of me is a view of the whole apartment after the fashion of a battle scene, a landscape after the battle. I wonder whether there happened to have been a war here in my absence when I was sleeping, a decisive battle, the central command itself. While I was sleeping, the Ruskies had come into the apartment, forced their way in. They knocked everything over with their rifle butts, shot the waterfall portraits out of the pictures, the sunflowers, and destroyed the leather clock. They knocked the mother of God of lichen made of sky blue plastic off the fridge. The head's gone. The holy water's scattered all over the place. They trampled the tiles in the bathroom. They raped all the women as far as possible. Here on the sofa bed, set up their general staff here, a committee on screwing affairs. They brought in horses, ate up the bird milky chocolates, smoked the cigarettes, fucked up the upholstery, and goodbye, see you in a future life in Belarus. They took my brother and my old lady as slaves. Me they surely killed, because that's exactly the impression I have, that that's exactly what they did to me. Killed me with some heavy objects, blew me away, such that inside my head I still hear the distant echo of those blows, those shots. But why me? Since my mother did pretty good business with them. Siding, paneling, Zepter. Why exactly did they blow me away? Why'd they shoot me in the head? So that now I feel like it's full of a feeling of scrap iron, of cranks spinning around their axis, a scrapyard of warped slates. Where were they when Magda had her views against them and openly professed an anti-Ruski ideology? But something's changed. I ascertain this when I open the vertical blinds. The world's broken out of its mould. The sun's bigger, fatter, lardy, like a parasite gnawing away at us. It fucks you in the eyes, without mercy, aimed right at me. It shines right at me like at the least a Gestapo lamp. Talk, Nails, you're going to let it out for us here, because if not, we'll turn up the dial and you'll die from this vicious, sibilant light, licking you clean with little white tongues. A bit of string is squeaking against the blind, the curtains to the side, and there's a spectacle. There's a spectacle I never hoped to see in my life, because there are no spectacles like that. Those sorts of things never take place in the world. I can't believe what I'm seeing. I want to lean out the window from the shock because my eyes don't want to open, and I see only as much as I can through the slits. The rest is dark. I bang my forehead against the PVC asbestos pane, which makes a sort of echo, a sort of reflux, a terrible echo that suddenly gets all the clearer. And I'll say further that the thing with my eyes, what I already said, that during the night they grew some bonus skin, and in general I don't see much, but what I see, I see. And that's no hallucination in my skull, no dim flashback, since a reality show that I see now, real TV. Now there are hardly any colours in the world. None. Alack. The colours were stolen in the night. Or whatever. Maybe washed out. Maybe they washed out that landscape, that country scene out the window in a washing machine with not quite the right detergent. The kind of number my old lady once did on my jeans too. So that one day I had normal blue jeans and the next day they were basically white. White big stars with a blank white tag. I was fucking pissed because in company at the pub I'd be finished. What, Nails, have you come for Holy Communion? But you're too late. There is no Holy Communion. It's over. Sold out. Go home. You can come back next year. It's not important what happened with my pants. What was. Only one thing's for sure. Whatever they did, whether it was acid rain or another ecological disaster with a tank of bleach, or that lefty had an accident while driving his Volkswagen Golf, full of speed, the heap of houses, a white wall run down with lime or some other shit. The house next door, the neighbours who made a real killing fencing the ripped-off cars the Ruskis brought in, all of a sudden is also half white from the top down. Half all white. Most often it's half of the houses. And what's on the bottom, on the street, what's more fucking obvious is red. Entirely. White red. From top to bottom. On top, a Polish pill. On the bottom, Polish menstruation. On top, Polish snow imported from a Polish sky. On the bottom, the Polish Association of Polish Butchers and Pig Stickers. And somewhere, I'm not looking, some orange-clad worker staggers around with buckets of paint, with rollers. White and red warning ribbons flutter in the wind so that the crows won't land and shit all over the place. Patrol cars, some other cars, some wiring, scaffolding. Sick. It just looks so sick. Sputniks can take a picture of the city from space. Paranoia. thank you all for coming along. And once again, congratulations to all the students who entered the translation contest for their fantastic work, but especially to the winner, Cameron Holloway. Just quickly to let you know that the next event will be here on May 3rd. There'll be information coming out relatively soon. And the topic is Trump, NATO, and Poland. So a little bit of a pivot to a different subject matter. The guest will be Andrew Mikta, who is a specialist in international security studies based in Germany. So you'll have information about that through the usual internet channels relatively soon. Thank you very much for coming along.